The Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another exciting guest on our podcast. She's from a state I used to live in, and she's from a party we often interview on this podcast. One of our friends' party. She's from the Libertarian Party of Minnesota, and she's running for U.S. Senate. Her name is Rebecca. So welcome to the podcast, Rebecca.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
We are glad to have you, and we look forward to presenting your message to our audience. So if we could please start by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
Yeah, so I'm up in northern Minnesota. I have a farm up here. We raise our family. I have a large family. We homeschool, kind of all those stereotypical, farming family kinds of things. I got involved in politics a lot because, I am also an Iraq War veteran.
Oh.
I did 2 tours to Iraq in the U.S. Army. I was a medic. And the time periods that I was in the war were, 2004, I was in Ramadi, Iraq. And then I did a year there. And then in 2006, I did a year in Baghdad.
Oh,
if
wow.
you remember your history of the war, Ramadi was in the Al-Anbar province, the Sunni Triangle, basically. We were there for when the Battle of Fallujah happened, running the aid station. I was also out on the line with the infantry and engineering battalions when they, did their stuff out in the city, doing medical support, setting up the casualty collection points, all of those kinds of things. And then in Baghdad, we were already there and set up when the surge started and doing the same thing. I was in a security platoon. We were doing 2RF, which stands for Quick Reactionary Missions. So like if something happened out in Baghdad because of my job, it was like 15 minutes. We had to have, wheels out in the ground, heading to whatever it was that had just happened, whether that be a firefight or an attack, or a recovery, KIAs, vehicles, any of that kind of stuff. So key points of the war that I came home from that, like just very, broken.
Huh.
My brigade was 2nd Infantry Division, 2nd Brigade Combat Team. If you look us up, we were just hit hard every single time. And then, our first deployment, we came home under combat strength, and that's, when you're, taking that number of casualties, those aren't just, statistics, on the news, it's not just 4 here and 6 there. It's those are our people that are dying, and those were our friends. And we all did. We lost a significant amount of people. And so, you come out of that with a very different perspective of war, Washington, D.C. and the politicians, the war powers, because a lot of that changed. They had to change the laws to make the war in Iraq legal, right? Because before you'd had congressional approval for war. And
Yep.
for Iraq, they didn't. It was came out of that with a very eye-opening, kind of extreme situation, but eye-opening of what, giving people unlimited amount of power could do and how damaging that could be, not just to, the American military, but to any country that we go in and try to, help spread democracy. So that's a lot of why I'm running, is to hold the corporate powers that have infiltrated D.C., hold them accountable, and get them out.
Oh, wow. So before this experience, were you political in any way?
Oh, I was too young to be political. I joined the Army, pretty much straight out of high school.
Oh, wow.
So there wasn't really a time before this, I was still growing up when all of this was happening.
Okay. So it sounds like this experience made you a libertarian. Is that correct?
This experience made me anti-government.
Okay.
That was kind of the path. When I joined the Libertarian Party, there was kind of this I wanted to get involved and I wanted to do something, and there were a few things that kind of fell into place, and the Libertarian Party is just kind of where I landed. So
Okay.
that's.
And when
But
did you
I
find
mean,
the
it's the
Libertarian Party?
anti-war. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a terrible habit of interrupting people.
It's okay. Please go ahead.
The Libertarian Party, what I like about it is the consistent anti-war platform. So,
Oh,
like,
sure.
not going in and we shouldn't, bomb countries into freedom. You know what I mean? And the government currently has this very long history since World War II of doing that exact same thing. And so the Libertarian Party has been consistently against that. And that's one of the things, like, once I saw that, I was like, oh, yep, I'm home,
Okay. Good. All right. So when did you find the Libertarian Party? Was that, how long after you got back from Iraq did you find them? Was it a long while after, or when was that?
It was just 3 years ago. And so in
Oh,
21,
recently. Okay, recently.
yeah. Yeah, I had just, once I came home from Iraq and I had this very jaded perception of government as a whole. And that included, political parties, not just politicians, but political parties. And I was never going to be satisfied with something that was lukewarm and inconsistent.
Okay.
I was looking for, if I was going to be politically active, I wanted a party that was willing to go as far and as extreme for this, that matched what I had already been through.
Sure.
And that was going to be very hard to find. And it wasn't really until 21, and there was like this whole kind of, I don't know what to call it, but like this, character arc, I guess, of like what I was going through too, because I when I say I came out of that broken, there were time periods after that where I really struggled with what we had been through and what was going on, and really the lack of understanding from people around me. Like, there's not really a whole lot of support for veterans, especially not combat veterans, because most people just have absolutely zero clue as to what that's like, because actual combat veterans in the United States is just such an extreme minority of people.
Oh,
And then
okay.
even further than that, being a female, like, there's way less of us than there are men who are already, there aren't very many. And so I didn't find a lot of, support and camaraderie after that. And it really took me, there are a few points that I can be like, that changed the way, because I know people, and more than a few, who have lost the war since then, who have just, they couldn't figure out how to live with what we've been through and have died just recently even. So that, the 22 veterans a day, that's a very real part of my life. And that's a very real thing for all of us that went through Iraq especially. And there were times where I was very susceptible and very fragile, and that very well could have been me coming out of that. And so there was this, when I couldn't engage in something else as being as broken as I was. And it was about 2019 when things started changing for me. And
wow.
there was this, I realized I had to, help myself get past Iraq, because if I didn't, it was going to consume me too, just like the people I already knew who had gone through that and not been able to figure out how to overcome the demons. And so then, so there was that whole time period that I had to make it through, and I did. And then after that, it was this energy and this anger. That's what it kind of turned into. And so this, running for office and being able to talk about these things and being able to really, speak and, say this is what we went through, and those kinds of have been extraordinarily therapeutic for me. So that's before that, I wasn't politically active at all. I was just trying to make it through the days,
Oh, okay. So in your position as senator, it sounds like you would want to reduce the military's involvement in foreign countries' internal affairs. Is that correct?
I would want to eliminate it completely. Yeah,
The
not
entire
just
military?
reduction. No, not the entire military. Like there's very real need for having a defense of the United States, especially with as many enemies as we've created over the decades, Like we still have responsibility for normal, just Americans to make sure that our borders are secure and that we are doing what we can to not allow America's enemies in to cause, destruction and wreak havoc with normal day-to-day lives of people who need protecting.
Oh, sure.
So I would say that we, defensively, we have a real obligation to people, but that all of the places that we are overseas, we need to start pulling out of there in a way that doesn't create a vacuum like we saw when we pulled out of Afghanistan. That could not have possibly have gone any worse than it did.
Yeah.
But I don't think people realize we still have bases in Japan and Germany and Italy, like all of these post-World War II, places that we established a base in. Once we went there, we're still there today. And so there's all over the world, we have American bases. And we would never allow that in our country for Japan to have a military base in our country. I mean, so we shouldn't be doing that to other countries as well. We need to be working on pulling out and having, a relationship with these countries in some other way than by through military might,
Sure. So since there's been debacles in pulling out, you mentioned the Afghanistan issue, how do you pull out without it crumbling completely?
In some, really it's like these are situations that are going to have to be addressed one-on-one because every place has a completely different set of circumstances, different governments, different, things that countries are dealing with. And in some places it just might be like, oh, well, we're leaving now, and we pack up our things, they shake our hands and we leave, there's not that Germany, Japan, that's where that would be probably what would happen. Now, Afghanistan, whole different thing. Like their country was still unstable. At all of those, some things that should have happened differently. And off the top of my head, we'd have to go through this, with a fine-tooth comb. But the best way to not cause a power vacuum as in a country is to not put this, set of circumstances on the ground that are going to create that in the first place. So we need to have a policy of not using our military in a way that manipulates other countries' governments and politics and culture.
Okay. That sounds good. So in addition to your concern with militarism, what other things are on your agenda for this campaign? What else would you like to do in your Senate seat?
I would address the economy, the overspending of the government, the debt. I mean, we're at $35 trillion of debt at this point. Nobody is talking about this. None of the big names that are running for office are talking about this debt at all. And they're not talking about it because they know they helped create it. And so they want people to be like, oh, this isn't really, we're just going to forget about this, because $35 trillion, that's a lot of money. And by the time that we hit January and new people are being sworn into office, I mean, it's going to be 36 trillion. That's how fast it's moving. So nobody's talking about it. Nobody has a plan for doing anything about it. Nobody has any incentive whatsoever to, reel back the funding of things and the spending of money. and spending taxpayer dollars. So like that's our money that they're taxing us and taking and then mismanaging it. Like in no other scenario besides government would we ever just keep voting. Why are we keep voting in the same people that cause the problem? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so I like we they don't want to talk about it, the people that are running for office and have been in there a long time, because they caused the problem. They know it. And so I would do something about the debt, or at least be a very big thorn in everybody's side, about just, not letting up, not letting go. Just keep talking about this, keep making a big deal about it until people are like, oh shoot, this is serious. Because right now, like I think our biggest threat to national security is the debt of our economy. Like this isn't, when you see read history through big, civilizations or big empires or whatever it was, they didn't crumble because, some raiding country came in and overthrew them. They crumbled because of mismanagement. And right now our money is becoming more and more worthless every day. The inflation, is, shooting up higher than it ever has in my lifetime. You can't, people who were already kind of at the bottom of the, the social ladder, the class, the working class is what I would call us. My husband's a mechanic. We have a farm. I mean, we're not rolling in the money, but the people like us that were always kind of, at the bottom and trying to make ends meet, this is who this impacts the most, because we have little to nothing left to try and help us through when all of a sudden, eggs double in price or triple, or, your basic things are going up crazy, things we need to get through the days. They're not a luxury, they're a need. Sure. And we don't have anything left to give up. And so the government had a responsibility to make sure that our money had value, and they have failed through inflation, through the overspending, through the central banks and the continual printing of money. So that would be, a big part of this. And a lot of that has been spent on wars and that kind of stuff. I don't even remember how many trillions of dollars spent in Iraq, but it was a lot. And then the third thing would be the overregulation of the, business. Like I said, I have a farm. It's next to impossible to be able to do anything on a farm without the government in your business and what you're trying to do. Every aspect of food production is overregulated to the point where we have made artificial problems of availability of being able to have access to food. I help run farmers markets. I do small ag kinds of things. And we have so many rules that we have to jump through that the suicide rate of veterans, as high as it is, the suicide rate of farmers is even higher. And it's because of the overregulation of the market and how hard it is to be able to get in and do well just to raise food, something everybody needs to be able to survive.
Yeah.
Whether that's cattle or vegetables or dairy or whatever it is, it's an extraordinary financial hurdle for farmers who make very little. It's less than 10% of what you get, what a farmer profit. But you have to spend all this money to make just this tiny amount and get this tiny amount back. And I could ag stuff and agriculture is really, that's where my heart's at. It's, I have dairy cows and sheep and pigs, and that's one of the things I do. So this is my real passion. It's not politics. Politics just get in the way,
All right. So to get things back on track with fiscal policy, do you want to abolish the Federal Reserve, or do you want to do the gold standard? What is your ultimate solution to stopping the ongoing inflation as not only in the present but going forward?
Yeah, well, we would need to, in the Fed. So abolish the Federal Reserve and the Fed go back to gold standard. You know, if you look back at like what the set of circumstances are when the country was doing better financially, you can see that when we were taken off the gold standard, that's when everything just kind of started spiraling out of control. And now we are to where we are today. So when we don't have any backing to our money, then the backing now is just artificial. And the Federal Reserve, there's no oversight. They can just be like, oh, well, we're going to print this amount of money and we're going to, do this. And so these people aren't anybody that's voted into office, but they're the ones that have complete control over how much our money is worth and our, the financial strings of the country, if you were, so like there needs to be oversight and there needs to be some sort of solid backing of our money, and there is not in either one of those. So yes, nobody that has so much influence of our country should have no oversight whatsoever. So the central banks, the Federal Reserve, all of that needs to be reeled in completely, and if not, just getting rid of them in its entirety. And, they would say, we have all these scenarios where we need this and this is what we're doing to protect it. But, but look at what's happened because of them. So I wouldn't say that they should have any authority whatsoever to be able to pull as many strings as they do in our country.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. So for this campaign, how are you reaching the voters?
Very slowly, unfortunately. I would love to be out and doing things, it's one of the things that we've challenged with as a third party. The media gives us zero attention. They just overlook small parties, like the media they're following their marching orders. They follow the Republicans and the Democrats, and if you're not one of them, then they have control by just ignoring your message completely and not including it. And so, because that's how most Americans get news, trying to find alternative ways to get our message out has really been the challenge. And so it's moving a lot slower than I would like because it's a good message. It's solid. When you're talking about the things that we're talking about, it resonates really with a lot of people on a universal level. But if you don't allow somebody to have access to the means to amplify their message, then, we have had trouble getting it out. So social media, we're on there. I try to do as many of these interviews as I can. But word of mouth, people. And I've noticed in the last couple of weeks that we've had people that have reached out and been like, hey, I just found out about you. I'd love to do this with you and this and this, but ballots have already gone out.
Yeah.
Anybody that's voting, through the mail, the voting has been going on for weeks at this point. So
okay.
Really, in the future, I've realized that, we need to have our ducks in a row, harder, stronger, faster, not anticipating election day, but anticipating when all the mail-in voting goes out, because a lot of people have already voted.
Oh, okay.
And I am anticipating running again, perhaps. I'm not closed to the idea so that we can build on whatever momentum we've gained for this election. I'm in this for the long run, so.
Okay.
This isn't the end. November is not the end. It's kind of just the beginning, but.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it. So you mentioned the mail voting. In our state, we've already started the early voting as in the polls. Does Minnesota have that?
Yep, we do.
Okay, so that's already started then, the early voting?
And I don't remember exactly when it started, but it has been going on for a while at this point.
Okay, so what do you think about that? Do you think that's good for alternative parties or do you think it's not?
I don't really I'm less concerned about if it benefits us as to where more how it could be used to be manipulated. So I would be I'm very cautious of any ballot that's not cast and handed directly into like the little, whatever the system is for counting it. When you let go of your ballot and it goes through the mail, so then there's this time period where nobody has it. That's where my concern is, like the integrity of the voting system.
Okay.
Because even if I can get my message out and people are like, yeah, we love this, we're going to vote for you, if there's no integrity in the voting system, then it's all for nothing anyways. So really that to me, that's one of the like top things, like when you're looking at a broken system, and that's what I think that we're dealing with, this whole thing, it's broken top down, and it's systematically so. So there's a number of things that need to be addressed, and I would say that the integrity of the voting system is one of those things, because even if you do have good ideas, and even if you do have the, people behind you, and you do end up with the majority, if your voting system doesn't have integrity, then it doesn't matter,
Good point. So, Rebecca, how can our audience support you in your campaign?
I'm on Facebook, Rebecca Whiting for U.S. Senate. I have a website, and that's whiting4Senate.us. You can donate through the website if you would like to. We have, actually, because like I said, one of the best things would probably just be reach out. What I could use, knowing that, this isn't going to end in November, I could use people that are willing to, help for, to build this momentum and build the network and the energy and, because I don't want to like just run a race. I want to build a movement. So
Sure.
And I want to do that with people. We got to have the people that are just like dedicated, trustworthy people that'll come together and maybe not even be a libertarian. That's fine too. But that, the goals are, sincere and they're legitimate and they're honest. And we're doing this for the integrity of we're doing this for the integrity of everybody, to help keep our country strong and so that we do have a future for our kids. So that's what, if somebody was like, well, I don't have money and, I've got one vote. Like if you have time and opportunity, reach out, because the goal in this, realistically, for this campaign, we have some like major challenges ahead of us to be able to win. But, use this momentum to build the movement and to keep it going forward. And so that's the goal for this election.
There you go. So, Rebecca, we thank you for coming on the podcast to talk about your campaign today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And actually, when you called earlier, I was like, oh, shoot, because like I said, we have a farm, and my pigs had got out, and I was chasing pigs, trying to get them in with the feed bucket back into where they were supposed to go. So it was probably looks pretty ridiculous if somebody had just walked in at that time.
Oh, sure. Did you get them back in? Did they come back in?
Yeah, you shake a little grain and the pigs are all like, oh, food, and they just follow you. But
oh, wow, okay, good.
Yeah, we know how they work. They just follow the grain bucket.
They like their food, huh?
Yep.
All right, Rebecca, we wish you all the best in your campaign and all your other future personal and professional endeavors.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, take care and all the best.
Yep, you too. Bye.